the only thing that matters. Instantly, a sense of deja vu hit them. Haha, what the hell is Fiery Cloud Evil God? Who came up with such a ridiculous name? Haha, I'm dying of laughter. Fiery Cloud Evil God, how absurd. Only someone like Lin Laojia could come up with such a silly name. Facing the name Fiery Cloud Evil God, netizens laughed freely. However, they didn't notice that as they mocked, the fiery mass in the sky suddenly began to churn. It resembled a volcano that could erupt at any moment. Damn it, you bunch of damn barbarians, how dare you mock my name? This name was bestowed by the gods. As this was said, the fiery clouds roared wildly, gradually coalescing into the face of a fierce beast. From a distance, it looked somewhat like a Pekingese, but in a larger version. Its fangs were even more ferocious than that of a Pekingese. As the gigantic beast head formed, the voice seemed to have been completely enraged. Roaring, "Let me show you the consequences of mocking me." Before the thunderous voice could fade, the massive beast head suddenly opened its enormous mouth. Boom! Dense black smoke, accompanied by dazzling crimson flames, rushed forward in an instant. Oh no! This guy? Help me! I don't want to die yet. Someone save me. The players, completely unprepared, found that the creature in the sky had attacked without warning. They didn't even have a chance to react. Watching the scorching waves approaching them, the players fell into despair. Even though they had transformed into barbarians, towering over 3 meters tall, in the face of this searing wave, they were still just oversized quails, unable to escape the fate of being roasted. However, just as despair filled their eyes, Pan Yinduo, who had been standing still, finally moved. The valiant female giant swiftly drew her massive sword from her back. Huh! With a furious shout, Pan Yinduo swung the massive sword in her hands. In the next moment, a tremendous sword aura burst forth, accompanied by a mournful howl as it slashed through the waves of fire. With a thud and a boom, the crowd seemed to hear the sound of water and fire merging. A muffled, heavy sound emerged, pressing down on everyone, making it hard to breathe. The waves of fire, under the astonished gazes of the onlookers, gradually split in two. However, even as the flames parted, no one could escape the fate of being engulfed. Just when everyone was thinking this way, what happened next left them in shock. The strike that flew into the flames exploded like a bomb. As the sword aura detonated, countless visible white energy blades wreaked havoc within the flames. In the blink of an eye, the waves of fire were torn apart by the dense energy blades, until they finally vanished from sight. Everyone stared, eyes wide in disbelief. The games they had played before were modern, and even with skills, they never exceeded human imagination. But what unfolded before them now was something entirely new and unknown. Unbeknownst to them, their scalps tingled as if electrified. Chills surged from their hearts, shooting straight to the top of their heads. The players' skin prickled with goosebumps, and the blood within them felt as though it had been ignited. At that moment, they were all flushed with excitement. Amazing. So incredible. How cool is that? When can I be that fierce? Forget it. It's impossible in this lifetime. After all, she is the clan leader. So what if she is the clan leader? Isn't she just human too? Looking at her gallant figure, the excited players were filled with longing. Especially Lin Luo and Sister Zhou, who had just successfully changed their class. Their eyes were brimming with admiration. Enough. If you're here to fight, we can change the location. As the waves of fire dissipated, the fiery clouds in the sky began to coalesce again. And at the same time, Pan Yinduo's roar echoed. She stood before everyone, holding the giant sword with one hand, her gaze fixed on the sky. Upon hearing her shout, the rolling fiery clouds suddenly paused and began to slowly retreat to the sides. After a while, a figure emerged from the fire clouds. With deep brown fur, a round face, and sharp teeth, it resembled an oversized Pekingese. Of course, even if this creature were truly a Pekingese, no one would dare to laugh at it now. This creature was indeed somewhat terrifying. The being that revealed itself from the red clouds stared down at the crowd for a moment before shifting its gaze to Pan Yinduo, saying, "Pan Yinduo, how did you become the king of the grasslands? How could you allow foreign tribes to devour our territory?" Hearing this, the crowd expected the fierce woman to be angry. But to their surprise, Pan Yinduo's face flashed with anger at the question, but quickly turned to embarrassment. They are a tribe, and although they don't get along with the magical beasts in the sacred beast forest, they are still beings on the same continent. However, the grassland occupied by her city has been unknowingly encroached upon. In any case, this is quite a humiliating situation. Faced with the questioning of an old rival, Pan Yinduo remained silent for a long time before finally speaking. "This matter has nothing to do with your sacred beast forest. I will handle it myself." Handle it? The dark brown fire cloud evil god in midair glanced towards the direction of the city. More precisely, it was looking at the outsiders within the city. After a brief pause, it suddenly spoke. "If you could handle it, you wouldn't have allied with outsiders. Right now, I doubt whether you are suitable to be the master of the grassland." Saying this, the fire cloud evil god snorted coldly, This matter doesn't require your intervention. The Sacred Beast Forest will resolve it ourselves. Warn your people to stay calm while our forces are mobilized, or else. It breathed out 2 jets of scorching flames. The rest of the message was unnecessary. The other party could surely understand. However, Chapter 280. The 2 Kings of the Sacred Beast Forest. Is this a serious name? This is my territory. You should just stay in the Sacred Beast Forest. Hearing the other party's words, Pan Yinduo didn't think twice before refusing directly. It is well known that the beasts in the Sacred Beast Forest have always wanted to invade the grasslands. Now, the other party actually wants to mobilize their entire army to prevent a disaster. Setting aside other concerns, even if they are sincere, once the disaster is over, it will be difficult to get them back to the Sacred Beast Forest. She doesn't want to see her entire clan's habitat threatened because of this matter. Hearing Pan Yinduo's words, the Fire Cloud evil god snorted coldly. I haven't invaded your grasslands not because I'm afraid of you. I'm just considering the face of that respected individual. With that, the Fire Cloud evil god turned and left, while his voice echoed again. Tell your clansmen that starting tomorrow, all beasts from the Sacred Beast Forest will be mobilized. If you don't heed the warning, don't blame me if you die later. As his words fell, the fiery clouds in the sky rolled, and the enormous brown beast stomped away on the fire clouds. Pan Yinduo watched the retreating figure, her brows furrowing. At the same time, a sense of worry arose in her heart. At this moment, the Tianpu Plain faced external invasion and internal beast turmoil. This was undoubtedly another dilemma for her. She didn't doubt the Fire Cloud evil goddess' ability to repel enemies, but if after repelling them, the other party wanted to stay in the grasslands, it would undoubtedly be a hidden danger. However, she couldn't stop them now, even with her Titan bloodline. She still couldn't suppress them. Just as the other party had said, the reason they allowed her tribe to develop in the grasslands was entirely out of respect for that individual. After thinking it over, Pan Yinduo couldn't come up with a good solution. Finally, she could only sigh and turn back to Duoyan City. Upon returning to the city, she immediately issued a command. From today onwards, hunting beasts is prohibited, but if beasts seek their own death, that will be treated separately. In fact, she didn't even need to say it. Everyone in Duoyan City had already heard the Fire Cloud evil goddess words. So, no one would choose to take risks at this time. Boom, boom. The next morning, just as dawn broke, a violent tremor awakened everyone in Duoyan City. What is going on? Could it be an earthquake? Are you kidding? This is a game. How could there be an earthquake again? Are you serious? Old Lin is a total maniac. Who knows what kind of natural disasters he would set up? As discussions ensued, players began to walk out of the city gates, looking around. What the heck? What is that? A great migration? No way. A beast tide. It's the beasts. Just as they stepped outside the city, players noticed a cloud of dust rising far in the distance, with yellow sand filling the sky. Feeling the violent tremors beneath their feet, they immediately realized what was happening. They never expected that after what was said yesterday, the other party would take action today. It is evident how terrifying the organizational capability of this group of beasts is. As their immense power draws closer to each other, the ground and the surrounding atmosphere become increasingly horrifying. At this moment, both players and the indigenous tribes in the city gather at the city gate to observe. Even the rarely seen leader, who is usually elusive, appears at the city gate. Damn it! Looking at the endless horde of beasts, her expression turns extremely serious. She never expected the other side to act so decisively. At this moment, she can only fiercely break the blue bricks on the city wall to vent her dissatisfaction. The arrival of the beasts on the grassland seems impossible to change. However, along with her anger, she also feels a sense of relief. The invasion of beasts from the Sacred Beast Forest into the grassland is infuriating, but compared to those foreign entities that erode the land, this is just a minor issue. Suddenly, she seems to think of something. Her serious, gloomy face suddenly reveals a smile. You want the land, right? Fine, I'll give it to you. With a decision made in her heart, she instantly feels relaxed, and her demeanor is no longer as burdened as before. Standing at the city gate, watching the running beasts, she smiles like she is bathed in a spring breeze. In contrast to her, the group of players who have successfully transformed into tribesmen are shocked, their eyes nearly popping out. The grand scene, with thousands of troops, they had only seen such imagery on television before. Yet in reality, apart from witnessing a horde of corpses, they had never seen anything like this. However, the thousands of zombies instantly appear as insignificant as ants compared to these massive beasts. It's like watching 10,000 ants run versus 10,000 elephants running. Although the numbers are the same, visually, it's an entirely different experience. Moreover, the beasts in their line of sight are even larger than elephants. Boom. As the horde of beasts gradually approaches, the ground shakes more violently. Some timid players are already turning pale. Wow, so cute. Look, the leading beast is so adorable. What the heck? Are you a pancake? That is called cute? My goodness. As the beast horde closes in, their appearances come into view. At this moment, the leading golden-haired, white-bellied big cat catches everyone's attention. For cat lovers, this fluffy golden cat with a white belly is incredibly kawaii. However, for average people, the size of that cat is far from cute. Have you ever seen a cute cat that stands as tall as a 4-story building and has a mouth full of fangs? Hiss! Another king from the sacred beast forest. Just then, an indigenous tribesman exclaims in astonishment at the big cat. Another king? Observant netizens, hearing this warrior's exclamation, immediately begin to inquire further. The barbarian warrior glanced at the unfamiliar young barbarian in front of him and quickly realized that this might be the ally who had joined their tribe yesterday. Knowing that the other party was completely unaware of the grasslands, he kindly began to explain. The entire sacred beast forest is controlled by 2 fierce beasts, one of which appeared yesterday. Before long, this barbarian warrior briefly narrated the origins of the sacred beast forest to the surrounding players. However, while the players were initially captivated, they all froze when they heard that the leading large cat was called Little Flower. One of the 2 kings of the sacred beast forest being named Fire Cloud Evil God was one thing, but Little Flower? Is that even a serious name? With a name like that, people would surely laugh. However, today, these players clearly hadn't forgotten the lesson from yesterday. Even though Little Flower sounded anything but imposing or serious, no one dared to laugh out loud. Who knew if that terrifying large cat had keen hearing like that Fire Cloud Evil God? Oh no, something feels off. Why is it coming this way? Chapter 281. The front line is just the newbie village. Wow. The monsters are attacking the city. Watching the leading giant cat charging towards Duoyin City with a group of massive creatures, the players outside the city, who were just watching the spectacle, were instantly scared out of their wits. If this weren't a game world, given the situation, they might have lost a few pairs of shoes in their haste. On the city wall, Pan Yinduo saw this and leaped down with a loud crash to the front of the city. With her movement, the surrounding barbarian warriors reacted, brandishing their weapons and standing solemnly behind Pan Yinduo. The fleeing players also realized at this moment that it was just a game. Thinking of this, they stopped running and curiously came back to stand behind Pan Yinduo and the others. As time passed, the monsters drew closer, causing the ground to shake violently, like a minor aftershock. Although everyone knew it was just a game, they couldn't help but feel anxious in the face of the terrifying beast tide. Some people were already starting to tremble at the sight of the approaching horde. Fortunately, the scene of monsters storming the city that everyone feared did not occur. The surging beast horde stopped about half a mile from Duoyin City, and the leading golden-haired, white-bellied giant cat slowly walked forward. Are you planning to break the agreement? Looking at the approaching giant cat, Pan Yinduo's expression was quite grim. Meow. Are you scared? The giant cat let out a terrifying meow, its face showing a rather human-like mocking expression. Don't worry, as a holy beast, I'm not interested in your shabby city. I just wanted to warn you not to think about attacking the Tianpu River while I'm away from the holy beast forest. The giant cat spoke proudly, casually glancing at the countless players and barbarian warriors outside Duoyin City. The disdainful look in its eyes seemed to indicate that it did not regard these thousands of players at all. But thinking about it, it made sense. With its level of strength, ordinary beings posed no threat to it. Pan Yinduo clearly did not want to engage with this arrogant giant cat and merely snorted coldly without further response. Seeing this, the giant cat's eyes flashed with displeasure before it turned and let out a series of piercing roars towards the beast horde. After the roar, it led the horde southward. Boom. The massive horde of beasts surged forward like a migration, following the giant cat in a wild dash. As the ground shook again, the monsters, seemingly well-organized, did not leave a single one behind. The vast procession numbered at least in the hundreds of thousands, creating an astonishing spectacle. Only when the beast horde had left, and the swirling dust was barely visible, did Pan Yinduo turn around with a serious expression. She surveyed the barbarian warriors behind her, then looked at the tens of thousands of barbarian players outside the city. Suddenly, she raised her arm and called out, "All barbarian warriors, listen up. Assemble the troops. We depart in 1 hour." After saying this, Pan Yinduo walked towards the city, leaving a group of players exchanging puzzled glances. Depart in 1 hour? Where to? Duh. Where else could it be? It's definitely to the front line. So soon? I haven't even experienced the beginner's village yet. What? Do you want to make an initial investment? If there is one, that would be great. How ridiculous. When have you ever seen a game by that old rogue Lin have an initial investment? But we can't just charge into battle right away, can we? Thousands of players were whispering to each other, and the scene immediately became chaotic like a pot of porridge. In the end, a few warriors from the barbarian tribe couldn't stand it any longer. Chun shouted angrily, "Silence! All barbarian warriors, gather now." His furious roar, filled with a chilling aura, instantly silenced the surroundings. The players timidly looked at these rugged men and instinctively moved their characters closer to the crowd. Soon, the team was assembled, dressed in battle gear, Pan Yinduo rode her unique mount and slowly approached the front of the group. Looking at the assembled team, her face inevitably showed signs of shock. It was no wonder. Just a few days ago, Duoyin City had only a few thousand people, and now it had transformed into a gigantic city with a population of tens of millions. Anyone would find it hard to accept. Fortunately, she understood the power of the divine beings, so although she was shocked, she didn't feel it was unacceptable. Moreover, these tens of millions of barbarian warriors belonged to her Duoyin City. Suddenly, she recalled the last time she and Lin Fei saw the heavenly waterfall. She thought that if she took this group of warriors to attack the sacred beast forest, she could likely bring it under her control. However, this thought quickly faded from her mind. The heavenly waterfall indeed held great opportunities, but she was not someone who would break her word. Even if the other party was a beast, she would never go against the promise she had made. Clearing her mind of all unrealistic thoughts, Pan Yinduo looked at the assembled army with a serious expression. Fellow barbarian warriors, the divine being has granted you the bloodline of the barbarian tribe. From this day on, you are my barbarian sons. From this day on, the same blood flows through your veins as mine. I, Pan Yinduo, the king of the barbarians, will stand with the entire barbarian tribe through thick and thin. Together we rise, together we fall, together we rise, together we fall. It was unclear who spoke first, but in an instant, the entire prairie erupted with a thunderous response. The momentum was even greater than that of the beast herd that had left earlier. The responding voices seemed to spread like an infection. At first, the players only responded symbolically a couple of times. However, as the momentum grew stronger, the players began to get carried away, each one shouting at the top of their lungs. In a moment, the roar of tens of millions filled the sky. Looking at the powerful assembled team, especially the waves of roars that hit deep within the soul, tears gradually welled up in Pan Yinduo's eyes. Suddenly, she remembered her father telling her in her childhood, if there was ever a chance to lead the barbarians, she must ensure their prosperity. She never expected that this long-standing wish that had troubled the barbarian tribe for generations could actually be fulfilled through her. Father, can you see this? In a moment of distraction, she gazed at the figure before her, murmuring to herself. Then she recalled another individual, feeling a surge of excitement. But she didn't forget that everything happening now, including the tribe's ability to emerge from the snowy mountains, was all thanks to him. At this moment, she didn't care whether he was an administrator or an ordinary person. In her heart, he was undoubtedly a divine being. He was the god of their entire tribe, the belief they held throughout their lives. No, he was the ultimate belief of the tribe for all eternity. All warriors of the tribe, heed the command. March towards the southern border. With this order, the entire tribe sprang into action. In an instant, the grassland was filled with beasts of burden and marching giants, all moving southward along the path left by the magical beasts. Chapter 282. I take you as a minor monster. But you're all bosses. The realm of the 9 provinces is not an independent world. It is composed of multiple different worlds, with the Tianpu Yuan continent located at the center of the 9 provinces. The mechanical city is situated in the southwest direction of Tianpu Yuan. Many years ago, those primitive mechanical creatures exiled in the Dark Domain had already been plotting how to escape. It was only recently that these primitive mechanical beasts finally broke through the spatial barrier and escaped. Thus began the disaster in Tianpu Yuan. Accompanied by a magnetic narration and transitional illustrations, millions of netizens began to understand the history of the 9 provinces. Although they received answers, more questions arose in their minds. Wow, this is incredible. If what the narration says is true, can I understand that our game has 9 worlds? Tianpu Yuan and Mechanical City are just 2. So what are the other 7? You ask me, I ask who? If it doesn't work, should we call the old thief Lin and ask? No way. Asking that old guy is pointless. I doubt he knows either. That can't be possible. I think once we eliminate the mechanical beasts in the Dark Domain, the next plot will unfold. Eliminate? You're thinking too much. Didn't you see the introduction? Those things were formed at the beginning of the Mechanical City's existence. You must know the history of the Mechanical City, right? Those things have existed for thousands of years. Rumbling. As the viewers in the live stream were engaged in heated discussions, a series of thunderous sounds suddenly erupted. With the transitional illustrations disappearing, a scene of darkness and chaos appeared before everyone's eyes. Gray dust filled the sky, obscuring the sun, while blue electric arcs flickered and danced. Surrounding them were thick smoke, flames, and devastation. It looked like a scene from the apocalypse. Wow. Sister Zhou, seeing the scene before her, couldn't help but exclaim, instinctively reaching out to catch a piece of falling dust. Gently rubbing it with her fingers, the dust vanished, leaving a gray mark on her hand. She looked at her palm in astonishment. This dust was warm. Roar. She wasn't surprised for long before a terrifying beast roar echoed. Sister Zhou turned her head instinctively towards the source of the sound. A scene reminiscent of primal combat suddenly unfolded before her and the livestream audience. Not far from her, a giant beast resembling a wolf and a tiger was engaging in a fierce struggle with a pitch-black, all-metal creature. Amidst rolling and tearing, blood splattered from the wolf-like beast. Of course, the mechanical beast was not faring any better, as parts flew off during their struggle. The clattering sounds continued, and ultimately, flesh triumphed over metal, with the mechanical beast torn apart into scattered parts. The blood-soaked beast staggered to its feet but collapsed to the ground with a thud after just a couple of steps. Following that, it fell silent. The entire battle scene was brutally intense. However, before Sister Zhou had a chance to reflect, new sounds reached her ears. When she turned to look, she saw several beasts similar to the one before, engaged in a fierce struggle with a mechanical creature. The majority of the beasts appearing on the battlefield did not possess magical abilities like those described in novels. These so-called beasts were simply physically strong. Even so, in the face of the mechanical creature, it took the lives of several beasts to bring down just one mechanical beast. The entire battle was evidently a life-for-a-life exchange, so brutal that it was hard to watch. Yet, despite this, those beasts showed no sign of retreat. At this moment, in the eyes of everyone, they were no longer cold and ruthless wild animals. They were warriors defending their homeland. They were the guardians of this land. No one expected that the beasts that had arrived just a moment earlier would suffer such a brutal blow. Barbarian warriors, raise your weapons. Let us defend our homeland together. At this moment, the leading warrior raised his giant sword and charged fiercely at a mechanical beast that was grappling with a beast. Without hesitation or mercy, he swung his large, heavy sword down onto the mechanical beast's head. Bang! The sound of solid metal clashing echoed, deep and muffled. However, that seemingly unmatched powerful strike only caused a few parts to break off the mechanical beast and made its body sway slightly. The mechanical beast shook its dark head and turned to look at the barbarian warrior. Roar! As if enraged, the mechanical beast let out a roar distinct from that of the beasts. After the roar, a whoosh sounded. The mechanical beast's tail, resembling a steel whip, lashed out at the barbarian warrior. The warrior instinctively tightened his grip on the giant's sword to defend himself. But in the next moment, with a bang, he was sent flying, tumbling on the ground for dozens of meters. Witnessing this scene, viewers in Sister Zhou's livestream couldn't help but gasp. Hiss! That was too brutal. Who would say otherwise? Look at that old warrior. He was directly sent flying for dozens of meters. Brothers, let us have a moment of silence for Sister Zhou. Sister Zhou, if it's too tough, maybe you can talk to Sister Luo and get us a starter pack. Yes, without a pack, I really can't imagine how to deal with these mechanical beasts. Seeing such a terrifying scene, viewers unanimously urged Lin Fei to offer a starter pack with generous rewards. Of course, such suggestions were merely talk. Even if someone truly proposed it to Lin Fei, he would not agree. It's a game. It has to be challenging. It has to be tough. Otherwise, where's the fun in just breezing through? Sister Zhou clearly agreed with the viewers' requests, but that was all she could do. She still had to face the situation at hand. What was there to be dazed about? Just then, a voice behind Sister Zhou startled her. It's good to recognize who it is. Otherwise, I might have swung my beginner's iron sword around like a wild attack. I was just about to look for you. Sister Zhou turned around and looked at Teacher Ma, asking, what should we do? We can't handle this thing head on. Hearing Sister Zhou's words, Teacher Ma looked at her strangely for a moment, then gave a thumbs up and said, You're impressive. You actually thought about going head-to-head. I wouldn't even dare to think of that. I initially thought that after becoming a barbarian and gaining immense power, even if I couldn't crush everything, defeating the monsters in the beginner village should be a piece of cake. But the result? I never expected that the monsters in this beginner village would be a bit terrifying. That's why Teacher Ma quickly gathered the team. It's clear now that solo play is not the way to go. However, there's no need to worry. These mechanical monsters may look scary, but as long as we coordinate well, we can take them down. These monsters are supposedly from the beginner village, yet they are all as terrifying as bosses. Old Lin truly lives up to his reputation as an experienced player. He doesn't treat players like humans at all. Chapter 283. The boss everyone is fighting Teacher Ma. Don't move, quickly draw the aggro. Don't be ridiculous. Can this thing really draw aggro? It actually has its own thoughts. Help, I'm done playing. Smoke filled the air on the battlefield, now a scorched earth. It was chaotic. Before Teacher Ma could gather the members of the rescue team, a mechanical beast resembling a black tiger pounced ferociously. Caught off guard, Teacher Ma and the others immediately reacted. According to his thoughts, with dozens of giants. Even if they were newcomers, dealing with this mechanical tiger should be a piece of cake. However, the outcome was completely unexpected. This mechanical tiger was extraordinarily fierce. Or rather, it was exceptionally tough. They had no idea what kind of metal it was made of. Their massive iron swords, when striking it, not only failed to inflict any damage, but also shattered their own hands. The enraged mechanical tiger, like a wolf among sheep, instantly wreaked havoc, leaving them in disarray. To be honest, if this were reality, they would probably have long since scattered in fear. Even so, some players, faced with this invulnerable mechanical tiger, couldn't help but freeze in place. One mechanical tiger left them at a loss. Teacher Ma observed everything, feeling a surge of anger. Watching more and more players fall to the mechanical tiger, a look of urgency appeared in his eyes. Fixating on the mechanical tiger, he suddenly seemed to notice something. His eyes flashing with insight. Half of you attract the mechanical tiger's attention, the other half find a chance to sabotage its abdominal circuitry. After careful observation, Teacher Ma finally discovered the mechanical tiger's weakness. Although this gigantic mechanical tiger was made of solid steel, its abdomen revealed some flowing liquid circuitry as it moved. He wasn't sure if his plan would work, but at this point, he could only gamble on a dead horse being treated as a live one. Upon hearing his words, some players also noticed the anomaly in the mechanical tiger's abdomen. Everyone, do as Teacher Ma says, a player shouted, taking the lead to swing his giant sword and charge at the mechanical tiger. Boom. The heavy sword, like a massive door, smashed down. No. It should be said it slapped down. The player struck the mechanical tiger's back with a single blow. This fierce attack, combined with the strength of the barbarian giantess body, would have turned a living person into a puddle of flesh. However, this seemingly terrifying attack, when it landed on the mechanical tiger, didn't even spark a single spark. Moreover, this strike instead caught the mechanical tiger's attention. Buzz, with the sound of air vibrating. The mechanical tiger's tail, like a steel whip, whipped up a fierce wind. The player, sensing something was off, instinctively tried to evade. However, his body's movements couldn't keep up with his brain's response. Before he could move, the tail, wrapped in a gust of wind, was already heading straight for his face. At this moment, the player could only watch in despair as the tail approached. Bang! Crack! At a critical moment. Just when the player thought he was about to fall, a figure suddenly flashed from his side to the front. A large, heavy iron sword was smashed apart by the mechanical tiger's tail, and the figure was sent flying like a broken kite. It was only then that the player clearly saw the person who had flown out. Looking at the athletic figure soaring back, he couldn't believe his eyes and exclaimed, "Zhou, Sister Zhou." The player's face turned pale as he stared at Sister Zhou, who was being knocked away. Without thinking, he instinctively chased after her. He never expected that in such a crucial moment, a prominent streamer like Sister Zhou would jump in to save him. As the player instinctively went to check on Sister Zhou, several other players rushed in to attack, and the battle on the scene suddenly intensified. Faced with the unharmed mechanical tiger, these players were also driven to desperation. Their expressions were resolute, ready to fight to the death as they attacked with all their might. However, their strikes were like tickling to the mechanical tiger, causing no substantial damage at all. Fortunately, they weren't trying to defeat it outright. With their distraction, all of the mechanical tiger's attention was drawn to them. As the mechanical tiger became increasingly aggressive, targeting only a few of them, the other players seized the opportunity. Taking advantage of the mechanical tiger's inattention, they quickly launched a sneak attack from the other side. Die! As the mechanical tiger leaped again, one player seized the moment, discarded his clumsy giant sword, and rushed toward the mechanical tiger. Without a moment's hesitation, he reached for its abdomen, seeing his hand getting closer to the mechanical tiger's belly. Excitement filled the player's eyes at the thought of success. Just at that moment, the mechanical tiger, which had been facing another player, seemed to sense something and suddenly turned its head to bite at the player's head. Oh no, it's done for. That thing noticed me. Damn it, how do you kill this thing? It's like it has no blind spots at all. Just as I guessed, since it's mechanical. It's reasonable that it has cameras on its body aside from its eyes. Totally reasonable. This is no beginner monster at all. Calling it a boss wouldn't be an exaggeration. Incredible. In other games, the beginner village is super easy, even if it's hard. There's usually a first recharge bonus. But here, not only is there nothing, but the beginner monsters are just like bosses. How are we supposed to play this? Seeing that even a small monster could be so terrifying, viewers in the live stream began to discuss. They wondered if it was just an illusion. But they noticed that all the games in the player's realm were starting to become increasingly difficult. Initially, it was just simple survival and hunting zombies. But as they played on, they realized that the game was becoming more and more challenging and competitive. If the game is going to be like this, at least give us a first recharge bonus. They looked for a long time, but couldn't find any recharge options or advertisements. Just as the viewers were complaining, the dark mouth of the mechanical tiger seemed to grow larger in the eyes of one player. At the critical moment, the player forced himself to dodge outside, narrowly avoiding the mouth filled with sharp teeth. However, while his head escaped, his body and left shoulder were bitten by the mechanical tiger. In an instant, bright red blood sprayed out from the player like a fountain, splattering everywhere. This bloody scene immediately caused the female viewers in the live stream to scream. The blood poured down, staining the ground beneath. The player, whose face was twisted in extreme pain, spat out blood foam, revealing a tragic expression. Feeling the pain as if his body could be torn apart at any moment, the player gritted his teeth